Have you ever felt like you're being watched, even when you're alone? That was just the beginning for me. One moment, I was patrolling a quiet road, and the next, I was caught in an endless nightmare. The blue light, the whispers, they took everything from me. Now, I'm left with only one question. Will I ever escape, or is this the end of the road for me? You're about to find out.
Sheriff Tom Granger had driven the same stretch of Route 28 in Montana for years. The narrow, winding road snaked through dense pines, their shadows creeping across his patrol car, like fingers reaching out from the dark. It was just past midnight, the only light coming from his headlights, and the dim glow of the moon peeking through the clouds. The radio crackled faintly, playing the same old country tunes he had grown accustomed to. Tonight felt different. The air was heavy, a suffocating silence blanketing the forest. He squinted at the road ahead, feeling a growing sense of unease as the trees seemed to close in tighter. Then, through the corner of his eye, he saw it. A faint blue light hovering between the trees, flickering like a flame caught in the wind. At first, he thought it was a distant car's headlights reflecting off the leaves, but as he drew closer, the light shifted direction, gliding smoothly across the sky. Tom's grip tightened on the wheel. The light wasn't behaving like anything he'd seen before. It was almost deliberate. Slowing the car to a stop, he watched as the blue glow descended, bathing the forest in an ethereal hue. His breath hitched when the car's engine sputtered and died. The radio went silent, replaced by a deep hum that vibrated in his chest. His pulse quickened, and his instincts screamed at him to drive. Yet he was paralyzed, unable to tear his eyes away from the spectacle unfolding above. The blue light, no longer distant, hovered directly above him, casting an intense glow that made the shadows around him dance. The hum grew louder, reverberating through the metal frame of the car. Tom reached for his flashlight, but before he could step out, the light intensified and his vision blurred. A wave of nausea washed over him, and as he tried to steady himself, the world went black. Sheriff Granger awoke, his head throbbing and his vision blurred. The world around him was a blur of shadows and light, his eyes adjusting to the brightness streaming through his windshield. For a moment, he was disoriented, unable to place where he was or how much time had passed. The engine of his patrol car sputtered back to life as if nothing had happened, and the blue light had vanished, leaving only the faint hum echoing in his ears. Checking his watch, he frowned. It was nearly 3 a.m., yet he could have sworn only minutes had passed since he first saw the light. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel, his instincts warning him that something was terribly wrong. He felt an odd soreness in his wrists and temples, as if he had been strapped down or restrained. He shivered at the thought, trying to shake the unease crawling up his spine. He turned the car around, heading back to the station. As he drove, the silence felt heavier, and he noticed faint static returning to his radio. The road seemed longer than usual, and his surroundings unfamiliar, as if he had wandered into another world altogether. His headlights flickered, illuminating the empty road, the darkness stretching endlessly in front of him. When he finally pulled into the station parking lot, the clock on the dashboard displayed 3:14 a.m. He stared at it, realizing that the time was exactly 14 minutes behind his wristwatch. Confused, he checked his phone. Its clock matched the dashboard's time. Something didn't add up. Tom entered the station, heading straight to the locker room mirror. As he splashed water on his face, he caught a glimpse of something unusual. Thin red marks on his temples. They looked like burns. His heart raced. His hand hovered over his radio, but he hesitated, unsure if he should report what he had seen. What would he even say? Feeling his anxiety mount, he decided to review the dashcam footage, hoping it would provide clarity. However, When he plugged the device into the station computer, the file was corrupted. Only fragments remained, brief flashes of the blue light, and a distorted, shadowy figure moving past his window. His hands trembled as he replayed the footage, a sense of dread creeping over him. Whatever had happened during those missing hours, it had left its mark. He felt watched, as if the very walls of the station held secrets he wasn't meant to uncover. Tom's mind raced with questions, but one thing was certain. This was just the beginning. Sheriff Granger couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching him. As he sat in his office replaying the corrupted footage over and over, fragments of the blue light flickering on screen, he felt an inexplicable pull to return to the location where it all started. The silence of the station, once comforting, now felt oppressive. The walls seemed to close in, as if trying to swallow him whole. Ignoring the protests of his own mind, he grabbed his keys and headed back out into the night. The road was eerily quiet, each turn cloaked in darkness. His headlights illuminated nothing but an empty, fog-drenched path ahead, the shadows of the trees whispering as he passed. The clock on his dashboard now matched his phone, 3:44 a.m. and counting. The place where the blue light had first appeared was easy to find. The forest there felt different, as if the trees themselves had shifted, leaning inward as if to guard a secret. He parked the car, leaving the engine running this time, and stepped out into the cool night air. A chill ran down his spine, and his breath fogged in front of him. He reached for his flashlight and scanned the area. The forest was silent, too silent. No rustling leaves, no chirping crickets, just the oppressive hush of a place that had seen something unnatural. His beam of light danced over the trees, revealing nothing but dense foliage and darkness. But then he saw it, just for a moment, a figure standing far off between the trees. It was barely visible, just a shadow against the blue mist, still lingering in the air. He blinked, and it was gone, leaving him questioning if he had truly seen anything at all. Heart racing, he stepped further into the woods. As he walked, a strange feeling overcame him, a sensation of déjà vu. The path felt familiar, the trees and rocks arranged in a pattern he couldn't quite place. His flashlight flickered, the beam struggling against the encroaching darkness. Then, without warning, his radio crackled to life, blasting static so loud it made him jump. The sound morphed into whispers, indecipherable, but chilling, echoing through the silence. He spun around, pointing his light in every direction, but saw nothing. Yet the whispering continued, as if coming from every direction at once. The static ceased abruptly, and the blue light returned, brighter than before, bathing the forest in its glow. This time, it felt stronger, as if it had been waiting for him. The hum intensified, vibrating through the ground beneath his feet. Sheriff Granger's instincts screamed at him to run, but his body remained frozen, his eyes locked on the approaching light. As the brightness overwhelmed him, the whispers turned into a deafening roar. The world around him faded into a blinding white void, and all he could hear was the echo of his own heartbeat. Tom's body felt weightless as he floated in the blinding light, the roar of whispers fading into an overwhelming silence. His consciousness drifted between awareness and emptiness, like he was caught in a void. In those brief moments of clarity, he felt cold metal against his skin and the sensation of being strapped down. He tried to move, to scream, but his body remained paralyzed, a prisoner within itself. Suddenly, he blinked awake, gasping for air. He was no longer in the forest, but inside what seemed like a vast metallic chamber. The walls curved in unnatural angles, glistening under an otherworldly blue light that pulsed rhythmically. His breath fogged the air, and his skin prickled with cold. He tried to lift his arms but found them restrained, secured by smooth, seamless cuffs. Panic set in as he struggled against the binds, his movements futile against the invisible force that held him in place. As his eyes adjusted, he noticed figures moving in the shadows. They were tall and slender, their eyes dark voids that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. They moved with an eerie grace, gliding soundlessly across the chamber's floor. Tom's heart pounded in his chest as he realized these beings were not human. They hovered near him, their fingers, long and impossibly thin, reaching out to touch his skin. A searing pain shot through his temples, and his vision blurred. The whispers returned, louder now, filling his mind with fragmented images. The forest, the blue light, and shadows moving all around him. It felt as if they were digging into his thoughts, searching for something he couldn't comprehend. Each touch sent a jolt of pain through his body, and he felt his consciousness slipping away again. Then, one of the beings leaned closer, its eyes locking onto his. In a moment of horrific clarity, he realized it was studying him, observing every reaction, every fear. The air felt heavy, and the light dimmed, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. The whispers grew louder, merging into a single chilling phrase that echoed in his mind. "You are not alone." Tom's vision flickered, and everything went black. Tom awoke with a gasp, his lungs burning as he struggled to draw in a breath. The blinding blue light was gone, replaced by the dim, metallic glow of the chamber. His restraints had vanished, but the cold metal beneath him remained, sending shivers through his body. He pushed himself up, scanning his surroundings with panicked eyes. The chamber was empty now, the tall figures nowhere to be seen. The air was thick, heavy with a metallic tang that clung to his senses. A faint rhythmic hum pulsed through the walls, vibrating through his skin. Every instinct urged him to run, but as he rose to his feet, he stumbled, feeling the weight of his own exhaustion. His hand brushed against a panel on the wall, and to his surprise, it glowed under his touch. Lines and symbols he couldn't comprehend flickered to life, pulsing with a strange energy. Tom's pulse quickened as he hesitated. This was his chance. He could escape, but he knew that whatever controlled this place was watching, waiting. He traced the symbols with his fingers, feeling the cold metal warm under his touch. A low hiss echoed through the chamber, and a doorway appeared in the wall, leading into a long, dimly lit corridor. The air smelled different, stale, like the remnants of a place untouched for centuries. Tom hesitated only for a moment before stepping through. The hallway stretched out before him, seemingly endless. He glanced behind, feeling the shadows at his back, urging him forward. As he moved, the walls seemed to shift, their metallic surface morphing into strange organic shapes, like veins and tendons, pulsing with life. The whispers returned, softer now, carried by the echoing hum of the chamber. They seemed to guide him, pulling him deeper into the labyrinthine corridors. He knew he was running out of time. Whatever had brought him here wouldn't let him leave so easily. The lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that danced and twisted in his peripheral vision. Suddenly, he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere ahead. He froze, pressing himself against the wall, his breath hitching in his throat. The blue light returned, faint and distant, but growing stronger with each passing moment. The walls felt alive beneath his hand, and he sensed the presence closing in. The footsteps stopped. Tom's heart pounded as he peeked around the corner, only to see a figure, one of the creatures, standing motionless, its eyes glowing with the same cold blue light. It tilted its head as if listening, then began to move again, its silhouette gliding down the corridor toward him. Without thinking, Tom ducked into a side passage, pressing his back against the wall as he watched the figure pass. He could feel its presence lingering, the air charged with its cold electric energy. As the figure moved further away, he slipped out and sprinted down the corridor, his footsteps echoing like thunder. He needed to find a way out, and fast. Tom's footsteps echoed as he sprinted down the endless corridors, each turn blurring into the next. The whispers grew louder, a haunting melody that clawed at his mind. The air grew colder, and the blue light pulsed through the metallic walls, making them appear almost alive, like a heartbeat reverberating through the structure. He felt the presence closing in, the shadows shifting just beyond his sight, and he knew he had little time left. He turned a corner and found himself facing a massive door, its surface engraved with the same alien symbols he had seen earlier. The door hummed with energy, and as he approached, the symbols began to glow, illuminating the corridor with an eerie, pulsating light. He reached out, hesitating for a moment, before placing his hand on the cold surface. A jolt of energy shot through him, and the door slid open, revealing a cavernous room beyond. The chamber was unlike anything he had seen before, an expanse of darkness, punctuated by clusters of floating orbs that glowed with the same blue hue. They hovered silently, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Tom stepped inside, and the door sealed behind him, cutting off the corridor. The whispers intensified, and he felt the pressure in his head build, as if the very air was alive, pressing against his thoughts. The orbs pulsed, and he realized they were watching him, their light shifting as he moved deeper into the room. At the center of the chamber, a platform rose from the floor, bathed in a beam of white light. Something lay atop it, a shape covered by a translucent veil. As he approached, his breath quickened, and a chill ran down his spine. The closer he got, the more the shape beneath the veil became clear. A human figure. He reached out, pulling the veil aside, and staggered back. It was himself, lying unconscious, eyes closed and expression frozen in terror. His mind raced. Was this some kind of illusion? Or had he never truly left this place? The room seemed to shift, the orbs converging above him, their light blinding. The whispers became voices, clear and cold, echoing through the chamber. It's time to remember. Pain shot through his skull, and images flooded his mind. Memories of the abduction, the experiments, the blue light tearing through his consciousness. He saw the faces of others, people he had known, taken and lost, within the maze of corridors. The truth hit him like a wave. He wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. The orbs descended, their light merging into a single beam that enveloped him. His body felt weightless again, the room dissolving into a sea of blue. As he was pulled back into the darkness, he realized with a chilling clarity, this was the end of the road, or perhaps it was just the beginning. Tom's body felt heavy as the light enveloped him, pulling him deeper into the chamber's depths. The whispers, once faint and distant, now resonated clearly in his mind, their message echoing with an unnerving clarity. It's time to see. His vision blurred as the world around him shifted, transforming into a kaleidoscope of images and memories, fragments of his life, twisted and distorted. He found himself back on the road where the blue light first appeared, but everything was wrong. The trees were shadows, the sky a void, and the road beneath him felt more like the cold metal floor of the chamber. His surroundings flickered between reality and nightmare, and he struggled to distinguish between what was real and what was not. Then he saw them, figures emerging from the darkness. They were the same creatures from the chamber, their long limbs and eyeless faces illuminated by the blue light. They surrounded him, their presence oppressive and all-encompassing. As they drew closer, the whispers merged into one voice, piercing his thoughts. "You were chosen." Tom tried to scream, but no sound came. The creatures reached out, their fingers touching his skin, and he felt a surge of pain, unlike anything he had experienced before. Images flooded his mind. Other people taken and experimented on, their memories wiped, and their bodies used for purposes he couldn't comprehend. He saw himself as one of them, trapped and helpless, forced to relive the cycle over and over. He realized then that this was no accident. He had been monitored for years, every aspect of his life, analyzed and recorded by these beings. The abduction was only the final step, a culmination of events leading to his capture and transformation. The truth settled over him like a weight. There was no escape. As the light intensified, his body felt as though it were dissolving, his consciousness fracturing. The creatures moved closer, their voices now a chorus. "You are part of us now." The world went white, and Tom felt himself slipping into the void. In his final moments of clarity, he understood. He wasn't the first to be taken, and he wouldn't be the last. The creatures were still out there, waiting in the shadows, and those who encountered them would suffer the same fate. The blue light faded, and with it, so did Tom. The silence was absolute. Tom's consciousness floated in a dark void, his senses detached from any semblance of reality. The only thing that remained was the memory of the creature's cold touch and the blinding blue light. But slowly, the darkness gave way to something else. Familiar sounds, the rustle of trees, and the distant hum of an engine. His eyes snapped open, and he found himself back in his patrol car, the headlights cutting through the dense fog of the forest road. The dashboard clock blinked. 2:37 a.m. He gripped the steering wheel, his hands shaking. The blue light was gone, and everything appeared normal, but the dread in his chest told him otherwise. He checked his watch. It matched the clock on the dashboard. His mind raced. Had everything he experienced been a dream, a hallucination? As he looked around, he noticed the forest seemed different. The shadows felt deeper, and the silence was more oppressive than before. His radio crackled to life, and a voice called out, "Sheriff Granger, do you copy?" It was the dispatcher's voice, but there was a strange echo to it, like a recording playing back through time. Tom hesitated, his thumb hovering over the button. When he finally pressed it, the static intensified, and the blue light returned, flickering in the distance. His heart pounded as the realization sank in. He was trapped, caught in an endless cycle of events he could not escape. The blue light grew brighter, and the road ahead dissolved into the void. The last thing he heard was his own voice, distorted and distant, echoing back to him from the radio. "You are not alone." And then, once again, everything went dark.
Thanks for joining us on this chilling journey. If you enjoyed this story and want more spine-tingling tales, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss when the next nightmare unfolds. And remember, there's always another mystery lurking in the shadows. Will you be brave enough to uncover it? Tune into Scary Stories 2U, where the truth is more terrifying than fiction.